Hello, welcome back to another Harkness Screens Round Table, where I'm joined by, SVP for Asia, Preetham Daniel. Preetham, how are you?
Not too bad, thank you.
Oh, lovely stuff. We've had a couple of goes at getting this one in the books, but we've got here eventually, and we're going to talk about some of the biggest topics that kind of, well, not plague you, but definitely surround you on a day-to-day basis in terms of your role and everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
The first bullet point that I was given was to talk to you about the movie landscape, which I suppose is a whole worldwide thing. For you, how do you see the movie landscape of the world as things stand?
Well, I think from where I sit in Asia, it's definitely exciting. It's really some big markets in the Asian region, and it's amazing how it's so different to Europe or the Americas. I mean, we're sitting here in India, we're looking at the box office of certain films, which is unbelievable. So we opened up with 50% occupancy back in October, and then we kind of moved on to our full 100% occupancy in cinemas on the 1st of February. So we've had a film called Master, which is a local sort of language Hindi film that was released and did about 23 to 25 million US dollars just in domestic box office. And then just over this weekend, we've had another small regional content that came out, which on its opening date had done over $1 million in box office. So, it's these numbers may look small from an international perspective, but these are the kind of numbers that, Indian movies make. These are not big budget movies, and these are local content. So that's kind of what it's doing. We've got Tom and Jerry out as well, which is tracking really well. So it's exciting here in India, but besides this, there's some really good news coming out of Japan. Japan never shut down for, didn't go into a lockdown or anything. So the cinemas were always open. Demon Slayer that came out, late last year, did some really big numbers both on IMAX, on regular content, on all different sorts of formats. So so the cinema business definitely has been very different to what we see in America or Europe.
And have you kind of been in regular contact with customers? Because I can imagine with so many films on and the reopenings that there is probably, maybe they've realised something they didn't realise before reopening, and they're asking for Harkness's help in order to sort something out.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions with the customers, so we're in constant touch with them. We've done a lot of online sort of videos telling them what to expect when they open up some of those cinemas, like in Indonesia and what have you. But for example, in China, we've been talking to a lot of customers. China just came out of the holidays. I've had a chat with one or two customers in China region, and they're all excited about what's going on and what their plans in the future should look like. Having a few discussions on those. Also talking to partners like Real D, for example, in the region, understanding what their expansion plans or what they're looking to do in the market for the next couple of months. In India, similar conversations around films, what movies coming in, when do we expect to see the box office sort of come to sort of a pre-COVID number, when some of the cinemas that are shut because of lockdown are now beginning to open. So yeah, different types of conversations, some on the future of cinema, some on sort of present, some really discussing strategies over what their strategy is in the next 6 to 12 months. So different type of conversation, yeah, but it's a lot of learning from all of this.
And from what you kind of said after I asked the first question as well, we're seeing that local productions are really doing brilliantly well. And obviously, local productions, as I understand in India, they're always done well historically anyway. But is that a really good thing to see, that you've got these kind of locally produced films that are doing so well in cinemas and people are really enjoying them in the local areas?
Yes, the answer is yes. I mean, given where we are today, where the Hollywood content's not flowing the way it should. Historically, India has been highly dependent on regional content. So about 90% of the content, or the overall box office, comes from regional content, and 10% from the Hollywood. So, during times like this, when Hollywood content's not flowing in, it's so much more beneficial for us to have all of these local content being played and churning out some of these revenues and keeping the theater chains alive and sort of, weather the storm. And so in many markets in Asia, I mean, if you look at China, local content in China is great. Demon Slayer in Japan is a local content. Korea has got a huge local content as well. So there's bits and pieces within Asia which contribute significantly to the box office in China. Box office in Asia, and it's predominantly because of local content. So it's good to see, and I think it's advantageous for every region to have some amount of local content in whatever whatever means that is. Only because you don't want to be 100% dependent on one sort of industry. Hollywood's great. Hollywood makes some really good movies, but just when that graph is down, we've got an alternate content to sort of fill in the theaters.
Yeah, of course. And one of your roles is, SVP for Asia. Obviously, it's quite an expansive role. But one of the things that you do regularly, or used to do regularly, I suppose is the better way of putting it these days, is you used to go to the trade shows wherever they may be, far-flung reaches of the world. But having spoken to Tony Dilley and Mark Ashcroft recently, you can do it from the comfort of your own home, maybe even your own bedroom, if you like, these days. How have trade shows been for you since you've, kind of stepped back into that world?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the norm today is to do it online. But is it effective? Yeah, we're all attending trade shows, but I don't know how much of it is going to translate into sort of results. Neuroscience proves that 60% of decision making is when it's face to face. So it's proven. So it's essential for everybody to have a face to face meeting, and I think the trade shows provided that opportunity when you can't travel to all different places in the world, but you had an opportunity to meet with everybody at over those 3 or 4 days of the conferences, which is a difficult one to do when you are on a virtual sort of thing. It's amazing because you can obviously touch base and understand about new topics, new discussions on cinema, but can I have that one-on-one conversation with my customer, understand how his family is, understand what his goals are for the next 6 to 12 months, and hence position our product within that, thinking. I don't think that's been achieved yet. And I think it's got positives, it's got its negatives. And there's positives and negatives on having, physical trade shows. I'm a believer of, the physical trade shows. And that's the whole point of it. You get to meet people. You put a face to certain names. Like there are names and customers who have exchanged emails with, but I don't know what they look like, or they don't know how I look like. So it's always nice to put a face to some of these names and have that one-on-one conversation. I think I missed that with not having physical sort of conferences. Yeah.
So, looking forward to the future, I mean, I know that there are numerous kind of trade shows already kind of announced for this year, and I think people are hoping that they will be able to take place in person at some point in the near future. I mean, how much are you looking forward to that, I suppose, is the real question there.
I guess it's very strategical question, because I think it's a turning point for a lot of us, because, there's, for example, the presence of our competition who are in different regions. And we may not actually be in those regions. So we may be actually losing some business or gaining some business on the other hand. We may be present where the competition is in. It's kind of give or take. But, to be in front of customers and understand what their need is and give them a solution face to face is very important. So I'm actually looking forward for whatever the next one is, and which makes sense for my region, of course. I don't want to be attending, or I don't think anyone from the company will be attending ones that may not be required, and it's outside of someone's territory or region. Like for example, for me, Cine Europe is great, but it may not really be talking to many of my customers, except the ones that are strategic in terms of international markets like an IMAX or any of those. But besides that, a Cine Asia or a CinemaCon becomes very, very important. This is where we speak. So we have to be picky about where we go. But I think it is definitely required. And I think it'd be good to go back into that sort of, into that mode of physical conferences.
And obviously, Preetham, outside of Asia, obviously, it's your job is not just to look exclusively at Asia. You have to look elsewhere to see how things may circulate into your market at some point. How do you feel like the markets outside of Asia are faring at the moment?
Yeah, we've been working with a few partners. For example, IMAX is a account that I'm I'm managing globally. And as we speak to these guys in different territories, we're trying to understand what the market may look like. I think it's a good news that cinemas are allowed to open in markets like New York from the 5th to the 6th of March. Good content lined up. So cinemas in the US is coming back, which means Hollywood content will sort of fall in place and line up. That definitely will have an effect on the Asian market and the global box office markets as well. Middle East is really doing well. There's some partners of ours who are still progressing with all their plans of expansion, so that's being positive. I can't say too much about Europe, but I think as much as I've seen and followed of the United States and talking to our partners in the US, I feel it's definitely a positive market. In the next 2 or 3 months, we should see those markets open up and getting back to some sort of pre-COVID normalcy, of whatever that is. But I think it's the next 2 or 3 months in that sense.
Well, Preetham, those are the questions I had for you today. Thank you very much for joining me on this round table. Obviously, I understand you're such a busy man, so obviously I appreciate the time that you've given me today and yesterday when we were trying to run through exactly what we're going to talk through. So thank you very much.